Hey there friends, I'm Leo, and welcome back to Devlog 8, where we're talking about the new character model and the new interface. And this is part 2. In case you haven't watched part 1, I'm going to leave a link in the description, as well as some cards that you can click on right now. So, back to the video. For our next topic, we have a completely new and reformulated inventory. This is something I wanted to do for a long time now because the old inventory was very messy in terms of how I was dealing with individual items and where the code was mainly focused. For example, you know how in Unreal we have those things called widgets. They are basically blueprints that contain tools to build the UI, right? This is what people use to make menus, inventories, item selection screens, everything. So my problem is that I was managing everything related to the interface in one individual widget, making it incredibly bloated and hard to find stuff when I was fixing bugs. The only thing that was separated was the actual inventory slots, because otherwise the system could not work. The system I have now is based on layers. For every aspect of the interface, I have a separate blueprint for it. So, as an example, I have the inventory slot. This is then contained by another blueprint called inventory. So, the inventory slot works the same. It manages the items on that way that I said that I was organizing them. So, the way that I'm organizing the item classes is the same, but what is changing is the containers and the interface that is holding these items. So this guy here, the inventory, is responsible for generating the slots and updating them. The inventory BP is then held inside another one called journal BP that is then contained inside the HUD BP. Another example is these tabs here. They are all one singular blueprint that is duplicated inside another one, which is then added on the journal. So you can see here that this is a bunch of widgets on top of widgets. So this makes for a much more manageable system that is easier to expand upon. Now, here is something that I was working on and I am very proud of the result. In Unreal, there is this thing called maps. Imagine an array that is like a list of the same type of variables, right? Well, a map is like that, but you have to link two types of variables together. So this one, for example, is a map of textures that are identified by strings. So you can have a piece of text that identifies a texture that is linked to it. I am using these to create my items in the game. Imagine that you have this business suit that only fits a male Yorkie. What happens if you pick this item up as a female Yorkie or as a male pug? The item should change appearance, right? At least for the size of the pug. Maybe the clothing is the same, but it is not the actual same mesh. Otherwise, the pug would just have the same body type, and everyone would need to have the same body type. So how can I have the same item inside of the code, but I can have different appearances and flavor text depending on who picks it up? One idea was to have like 50 different variables inside of the item for each single race, but that is where I'm using maps. Here is an example of what I'm talking about. The way I identify what piece of gear is for what race and what sex is by using these keywords. Now here's the best part. I needed to verify what the player is in order to pick up the right variable, right? Well, but I don't want to always have to verify again and again for each type of variable. So let's say that I need the flavor text for an equipment. I will need to verify what the player is so that I can search for this link so that I can pull out the value of the flavor text. I don't want to have to do this verification every single time because it can get messy, you know. It's just if I change something in the future, I can't have this verification over and over again, otherwise it's very hard to debug later. So I made a solution where I can call upon just one single macro and it works for any type of variable, and I can use it now and in the future, and I can change it in the future, I can expand upon it. It basically is all about wildcards. Wildcards are variable types inside of Unreal macros that are not defined, meaning they act as anything you want and you can change their values to what you want later. So for this macro, I receive an input of maps, where one of them is a string that is linked to a wildcard. This way I can feed anything I want and receive the right value for anything I want. I don't have to make the same verification regardless of where the code is as well, because this macro is a part of my macro library, so I can call upon this macro on any blueprint that I am at any given moment. Anywhere inside the project, if I need to get the right value, I can simply call this macro and boom. So yeah, I truly lost my shit when I saw this because it works so well with very little tweaking, and I'm still flabbergasted about everything. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys can tell that this is my favorite part of this whole devlog, is because I love these maps and I love the solution. You know, you can see that even for the fur masks that I was talking about, you can have individual ones for each race and sex and it works. And if you have like an item that is unisex that should work for every race and every sex, you can just add a tag called all, and when the macro is there, it is going to recognize that it has a tag called all and it's just going to return that. So you can use that only if you want to, otherwise you can just set it to all and it's done, you know. I could have also like an item that has the same image but has different text, or has different text but is the same image and mesh, or any combinations that I want in the future, and it is future proof too, so yeah. But enough of that, let's talk about 2D art. You probably noticed that I have a new interface too. Well, most of it I drew myself, but I was using an interface as a base for what I made. A couple of months ago, I hired a very talented artist to make the dialogue screen mockup, and he came up with this really amazing design. And with that, I decided to keep doing it by myself because there is just a lot of trial and error that I wanted to do. For example, here is what my Photoshop doc looks like. I need to always split several parts of the interface depending on my needs, so I need to have the source file at all times, and things that I want to animate or things that I need to split in order to use in the engine. Something like this is very hard to communicate and ask for him to do because it's very specific to what the engine needs and what I'm wanting to do with it. Also, if you're wondering how I have the big Photoshop document, it's this thing called artboards, and I just discovered it. It lets me have several different documents spread in one canvas, and then you can just export all of them together. So if you want to have like a menu mockup, you can have all of them using these artboards. So with these artboards, I can have every single small aspect of the interface, as well as my references and inspirations in just one area. One other awesome thing that I worked on is a 2D particle system, since the regular 3D particles can't really work on interfaces. I found this flipbook textures node on the material that makes a sprite sheet loop in order to have 2D animations. But the problem that I found with that is that I wasn't able to make it not loop and only play once, because flipbook textures are based on another node called time, and you can have a single variable, which is what I did. So here is where I made a custom widget that can contain the particle material. You can also call upon this widget to activate your particle system. You can set speed, or if you want it to loop or not, just like a regular particle system. And here it is in action, working on my tab system. If you guys want me to make like a video teaching how to use this, as well as a download link for it, I would be happy to do it. Just let me know in the comment section. And here we arrive at my latest topic. If you hover your mouse cursor over an item, you get the same old description box from before, except it is completely reworked with a little 3D spinning model floating so you can have a better look at the item. And that is not actually a 3D model, it's a flipbook texture of the object that just makes it look like it is rotating. The way I do this is with a free plugin called Sprite Generator. With this, I set up this camera with a rotating actor, and the actor will rotate the model just slightly. Take a screenshot, then repeat. After 64 screenshots, I tell the camera to save the image into my computer. From there, I change the name of the file and then I import back as a texture to be used on the object. I then have a dynamic material instance that is just playing the flipbook animations, and what I do is I made the texture itself a parameter, and then I can change that via blueprint using my item description box. And there we have it. The video was probably a little bit lengthy, but I wanted to really go over the stuff that I made and then show you through my process. You know, even though the video is bigger, it is some sort of a documentation not only for you but also for me. And I think it's very good for me to stop a little bit and count all of the stuff that I did and go over with a little bit more detail. So yeah, the main purpose of these reworks is also that I am thinking of pivoting the game idea a little bit. I'm going to explain more on the coming videos, but let's just say that I want to focus a lot more on polish, making the game incredibly fun and pretty, even if I have to spend a lot more time doing stuff that seems more basic, like player movement. So I want the core experience of the game to feel good to play, that's all. So stuff like combat is going to take a lot of time for me to make because I really want to do the best work that I possibly can. And that is why I think this rework marks a big landmark for the game's development. Now the stuff that I'm making is not even close to being a placeholder, it's more finalized now. And this also leads us to some other news. I was watching the latest video by Raymond Cripps when he says that he needs more time between devlogs, and he's going to focus more on developing the game itself than making content for YouTube. And this is something that I was noticing is you can focus more on making your game or you can focus more on making content. I think that for a while I was really focused on like making stuff for Patreon and making content for you guys to the point where I was making a lot of placeholder stuff just for the sake of having something to show. So I don't think that is healthy for the game as well because I end up making too much stuff that I'm not even going to end up using. So that video really hit home for me because I was having lots of anxiety and panic attacks because I had to make one full character as well as 8 tutorials and one full devlog every single month. So, you know, as well as developing a good chunk of the game to have something to show. So in light of that, I decided to stop with the Patreon page for now. I'm going to pause the page too, and I may reopen it in the future, but for right now my main focus is on developing the game itself and documenting it. So I'm still going to be making devlogs. I'm just going to take a little bit longer to make them, like 2 or 3 months, at least to a point where I feel like I have enough content to show. And let me know what you guys thought about all of these new mechanics and what you think could be changed or made better in some way. So if you guys have anything you think could be better, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Leo, signing off.